I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years.
Nothing has brought me greater joy than watching the Walt Disney Company absolutely panic over the last few weeks. They're mad at South Park because they're making fun of their woke ideologies, constantly race swapping or religion swapping everything in their movies.
They destroyed her rather than merely making fun of her. The internet didn't simply react when South Park focused its vicious spotlight on Rachel Zegler and Disney's already terrible Snow White remake. It exploded. What had begun as a contentious casting choice had already sparked outrage. However, as the animated juggernaut struck, the slow burn escalated into a full-fledged wildfire. There were no surprises in this episode. It made fun of, imitated, and emphasized everything that fans had been posting on the internet for months.
One major development going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler and her attitude towards South Park Studios and Paramount after learning about what they are planning for their upcoming special called the DEI Special.
In a matter of hours, Zegler's name surged to the top of trending lists. Timelines were overrun with memes. Shared, critiqued, and remixed clips regardless of whether they approved or disapproved of the remake. All spectators had something to say. Some laughed, while others grimaced. In addition to making fun of Rachel, the parody turned sound snippets and interviews into hilarious grenades by weaponizing her own words.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway. And that's when I started to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse?
What was once Disney's next big fairy tale abruptly became a pop culture catastrophe. The issue went out of hand the instant South Park broadcast its takedown, and what transpired was nothing less than a satirical PR catastrophe. As you can see, Rachel Zegler was more than just a wayward celebrity. She was turned into a full-fledged caricature in South Park's upcoming DI special, which is a follow-up to their notorious Panderverse episode, and it appeared to have been lifted verbatim from the most offensive online forums. They went for spectacle rather than subtlety. During every scene, the animated Rachel would storm onto the sets and give lengthy, preachy tirades about how the real Snow White was a dangerous holdover from the past.
Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
She wasn't simply contemptuous. She yelled at her co-stars in a belligerent manner, rolling her eyes at screenplay recommendations and breaking into monologues about equity and reworking the fairy tale to embrace what she referred to as modern redemption through progress. She interrupts other characters whenever they attempt to speak, claiming to be the only one with the courage to confront toxic memories. She mocked any trace of romanticism or tradition in the original Snow White, dismissing it as toxic garbage. The cleverness of the spoof extended beyond its absurdity. The degree to which it closely matched what Rachel had stated in actual interviews despite being exaggerated, the animated version of her character didn't feel wholly made up. It was strangely familiar. Everyone else in the room, including the cartoon co-stars and imaginary Disney executives, just grimaced as she strode through the spoof, behaving as like she was the only one who could save society. They weren't sure whether to speak up or risk being steamrolled next.
On the original production, I was scared of it. Oh, it was so weird. It was the stalker. Like, I feel like if you are taking on the most iconic Disney role ever, genuinely, like this was the most prolific Disney film, I feel like you should kind of have some sort of reverence for the original production.
The most shocking aspect was that everything was uncannily identical to what she had truly said. However, that's only the beginning. What really shocked you is what transpired behind the scenes after that parody aired. At first glance, it appeared to be the ideal role for any budding actress. Rachel Zegler was regarded as a rising star with the voice charisma and on-screen presence to lead a major studio production after her highly praised breakthrough performance in West Side Story. Disney praised her as the ideal face for a new generation of fairy tale heroes when they proudly revealed that she would be playing the new Snow White in their ambitious live-action remake. It was envisioned as the next great thing, a combination of current storyline and vintage Disney charm reinvented for modern audiences. The press releases were dazzling. Industry experts hailed the action as daring, and Rachel expressed her excitement about the chance, calling it a great honor and expressing her desire to motivate females everywhere. The marketing apparatus was prepared to function. However, that upbeat narrative quickly fell apart, and the reaction started a few days later.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
White! He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
Thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
On the internet, there were strong discussions about the choice of a Latina actress for the role of Snow White. The same query was asked often in comment sections by YouTubers and critics. Why cast someone who obviously dislikes the original material? The remarks were more problematic than the casting. In one interview after another, Rachel disparaged the original. She described it as strange and antiquated. The prince was a stalker, she claimed. She claimed that Snow White would now dream of power rather than love.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
The
Our
right to buy
reproductive
Cosby
rights.
sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face
Go
of a
vote blue.
serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
And this started with the movie star Rachel Zegler, who I believe would be categorized as a loudmouth dope.
And that is why we hate the diversity, equity, and inclusion casting and writing in movies.
In addition to that, there was already an uproar about her being cast as Snow White because she is not Caucasian. She is a Latina. She is half Colombian. And so people were like, why were you cast in the first place? We just had a black Little Mermaid. Now we're having a Latina Snow White, and she is literally called Snow White. This doesn't make sense. Yeah, the entire film's about a love story. Yeah, I mean, it's about a love story because that's what the point of the film is. And I'm sorry that chivalry and a man pursuing you is now deemed as stalking, which now it's kind of making sense why men are opting out of the dating scene. As an actor, you don't get to dictate anything. You don't get to dictate if a film actually happens. You don't get to dictate when it is shot, how it is shot, if you can ever speak about it to the public. You are simply just there to show up and say your lines and look the way they want you to look.
This wasn't progress for many. It was a razor. However, South Park intervened. Controversy is nothing new to Matt Stone and Trey Parker. Crossing boundaries, making fun of holy cows, and unapologetically embracing the ugliest aspects of pop culture are the cornerstones of their entire brand. For these two South Park creators, nothing has ever been off limits, including politics, religion, and Hollywood scandals. They have attacked international leaders, celebrities, businesses, and entire philosophies, frequently with such ruthless precision that their programs go viral almost immediately. Additionally, they were loaded with fresh ammunition and locked this time. The project's objective is already mired in dispute. The live-action Disney White Snow Parker and Stone took all the elements of the drama and created a vicious spoof that covered everything, driven by months of online criticism, media pandemonium, and one divisive lead actress. One scene in their DI special, a spiritual follow-up to the Panderverse, left viewers astonished and frantically rewinding to confirm they saw what they believed they saw.
It was more than a slight against Snow White.
It was a thorough analysis of the whole dispute over Disney's new course. The criticism from devoted followers and the divisive character at its core Zegler, Rachel the Snow White parody hit me like a kick to the stomach. The satirical version of the movie left viewers in a state of disbelief, since it was so wildly improbable and hauntingly similar to actual occurrences. Every sentence was brimming with nuanced meaning, parodying Hollywood's fixation with performative virtue signaling as well as the new movie's storyline twists and casting choices. It was impossible for viewers to ignore how the animated Rachel persona mimicked her most contentious real-life interviews almost verbatim. Because of the deliberate likeness, the mockery was more painful. For fans who were already annoyed by the remake's direction, the South Park interpretation seemed like long overdue approval. It was an awkward time of reckoning for the movie's backers. In any case, the spoof shook the foundation and broke down the walls in addition to hitting near to home. Their portrayal of Rachel was blatantly arrogant and self-righteous. She ignored the plot and ranted about saving the planet. She chastised the evil queen for trying to take center stage. It was scathing and went viral in a matter of hours. Social media was inundated with clips from the special. Supporters compared Rachel's real-life interviews with a parody side-by-side. There was an unnerving overlap. It was criticism, as well as satire, and that's when things went wrong. Rachel was incensed, according to people close to her. She experienced a surprise attack. According to insiders, she saw the spoof as a very personal attack on her integrity as a woman of color working to question archaic conventions and change the way traditional roles are portrayed in Hollywood, in addition to being an actress advancing her career. She saw the cartoon derision as encompassing more than simply her thoughts on Snow White. Her larger goal of promoting diversity, inclusivity, and advancement in a field that has traditionally silenced voices like hers was directly impacted. She claimed that she intended to make a statement to protect herself, but Disney had other ideas. The satire, in her opinion, took away that effort and made it into a joke, turning her passion into a punchline and making fun of the same causes she felt were worth fighting for. Several sources claim that Disney executives quickly intervened after recognizing the extent of the impact from the South Park imitation. Almost immediately, meetings were arranged to evaluate the possible harm to PR and determine ways to control the problem before it worsened. Their remedy was extreme. They instructed Rachel to be quiet at all costs. No Instagram stories, no tweets, no casual remarks during interviews. It was suggested that she stop using any media. Executives were concerned that even a well-intentioned clarification could backfire spectacularly, reigniting the controversy and further entangling Disney in the storm. The concern went beyond the parody itself and was about averting a second wave of backlash that could be triggered by anything she might say in response. No interviews, no tweets, and no media. They feared that any reaction might exacerbate the flames. Rather, they canceled all of her planned engagements, including talk shows, red carpet events, and even a supposed SNL appearance. Everyone understood the reality, despite the official justification of scheduling issues. Within Disney, Rachel's glare had become radioactive. Anarchy was breaking out. Bob Iger, who had just been reinstated as CEO, was immediately dealing with serious issues that would test the mettle of even the most seasoned business leader. The industry was rocked by Marvel's recent failures as big tentpole releases fell short of box office projections, and fans were more outspoken about their disillusionment with formulaic storytelling. In an attempt to avoid what many thought would be another failure, the Daredevil reshoots debacle exposed deeper creative disarray within Disney's streaming division, with entire narrative lines being altered, showrunners fired, and important characters ignored. In the meantime, Disney Plus's subscriber base was not just declining, but also falling. Global expansion had stalled. US retention was fluctuating, and growing grievances regarding the caliber of the content and political intrusion were garnering media attention. The empire was in danger, and just when it looked like things couldn't get any worse, Snow White emerged as the newest and possibly most obvious symbol of everything going wrong. Long-time, devoted subscribers were canceling in droves, citing burnout and a disconnect from the brand's once unwavering identity. Now, their Snow White remake, which was supposed to bring the brand back to life, was a joke, and South Park had just made it 10 times worse. Insiders claimed that daily emergency meetings were taking place, and PR teams rushed to revise their talking points. There were rumors that whole scenes were being cut and res hot. The worst part was that they couldn't decide whether to blame South Park for making fun of everything, Rachel for standing up, Gallaudet for allegedly slamming into her, or the fans for opposing change. Things worsened behind closed doors. According to reports, Rachel felt deceived. According to reports, her camp started looking at legal possibilities, claiming that Disney had violated certain provisions of her contract that ensured media presence and promotional support visibility in the run-up to the movie's release. According to people familiar with the matter, Rachel and her team felt that the studio had deliberately excluded her from important publicity opportunities that were a part of her contract, in addition to failing to publicly defend her throughout the mounting reaction. There were apparently significant conflicts behind the scenes as a result of the decision to postpone several appearances, including big talk programs and red carpet interviews, without consulting her. Allegedly, legal counsel started reading the fine language to see whether any of Disney's decisions would be seen as going against the provisions of the agreement. Although at that time no formal legal filing was made, the fact that legal action was even being contemplated demonstrated how strained the star-studio relationship had become. Was it a genuine threat, or just a bargaining ploy? No one was certain. However, one thing was obvious. Rachel and Disney's relationship was rapidly failing. Gal Gadot, who had previously starred in the movie Saving Grace, was now the subject of her own gossip. There were rumors that the tension on set was intolerable and that she and Rachel hadn't spoken in weeks. Because of internal strife, entire sequences were discarded, and everything was being memed to death. Something unusual occurred when the South Park parody gained popularity.
The conversation changed.
Snow White was no longer the only topic. It was now about culture, tradition, progress, representation, and respect. Rachel's supporters claimed that she was advocating for a fresh style of storytelling and attempting to subvert antiquated fairy tale cliches. One thing brought both sides together. Despite the criticism that she was arrogant for trashing a classic and then playing the victim when confronted. Whether you laughed or cringed, you couldn't deny that the parody had touched a chord. Right now, everyone has a straightforward inquiry. Will Snow White 2025 be a success? The odds are not favorable. The movie has already been postponed, res-hot and rewritten. Its celebrity and studio are at odds, and satire has taken over the public's perspective. Can it transcend this, or will it be remembered as the movie that shattered Disney, even if the acting is excellent and the cinematography are stunning? Gal Gadot's performance as the evil queen is particularly powerful. This is the truth. This goes beyond a single actress or film. It concerns what transpires when a multi-billion-dollar brand loses command of its story. It explores what occurs when sentimental expectations and contemporary messaging combine. It also discusses how quickly things can get out of control when you're torn between two generations that have rather different ideas about what a princess ought to be. Though she may not have meant to start a culture war, Rachel's glare is now its face because of South Park's unapologetic mockery. Only time will tell if she bounces back from that. This narrative isn't over, despite what you may have assumed. There is already speculation that a future episode of South Park would revisit the Snow White story. Additionally, insiders claim that Disney is quietly preparing for even another round of derision, possibly even a vicious parody of Bob Iger. What do you think, then? Is this only the beginning of a contemporary fairy tale? Or is Disney finally paying a price for losing sight of the enchantment that gave its classics their eternal appeal? Tell us in the comments. Additionally, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell if you want more behind-the-scenes celebrity chaos parodies and pop culture meltdowns. Because we assure you that South Park will continue to rock Hollywood to its foundations.